Okay, I'd like to open the meeting for the Finance Committee at 7:30. First off, I do have a change in the minutes before I get them approved. Item number 2 says, consider the approval of the minutes of the Public Works Committee meeting held on August 1st. That should be the finance meeting. It does state it below that, finance, but it doesn't have it on the top, so that's one adjustment that needs to be made. Can I get a motion to consider the approval of the minutes of the Special Finance Committee meeting held on August 15th?
So moved as
Thank you.
amended.
Second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Number 4, discuss seeking IRMA liability workman's comp insurance bids. I wanted to kind of just open this up. I'm sorry. You know what, we're going to start with the monthly reports. I'll have Eileen go first. So I'm going to have Dave introduce Eileen, since Eileen's first time coming to the Finance Committee meeting. Brad's on vacation. Is it Ruth?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apology. My apology. I thought Eileen was coming.
Ruth.
Yes, okay, Ruth, sorry. So Ruth, Dave will introduce.
Yeah, so Ruth Gibson's one of a few of our staff accountants, the folks that really do a lot of the work behind the scenes, and you'll see them when we have our budget meetings. And but yeah, so I mean, Brad is at a conference this week, so Ruth is going to give some of the highlights in terms of the major revenues and expenditures with the monthly report.
So item number 3, July monthly reports. We'll let Ruth go over that.
Basically, July was a rather pretty good, strong month as far as the revenues go. Sales tax was up 9.7% over a year ago. That's approximately $995,000. 4 of the last 12 months have established new highs for sales tax. Use and income tax were down just slightly over the comparable period, but in terms of total dollars, it was less than $10,000 total, so not real substantial. Property tax collections were strong so far in this fiscal year by both Will and Cook counties. These sort of vary. The fluctuations in collections are not uncommon. It's due to when the tax bills are mailed, when they're paid by the property owners, and then when they're ultimately distributed by the various counties. Video gaming remained very strong at $27,752, which was $10,613 greater than a year ago. Our motor fuel tax this month was up 23.7%. And a couple of other items to note: the amusement tax was ahead of a year ago by $138,000, as well as building permits, which are up $120,000 over the previous year to date. On the expenditure side, the only thing on the general fund I can call your attention to, the police department will look like they were overspending, but that related to the fact that we paid out the retro payment to all the officers. And that was owed going back to a liability period starting on May 1st of 2016 through the end of the settlement of the contract.
And that was based on a contract being settled at the time it was.
And a lot of that, there is an audit accrual that's done for the audit purposes that expenses a lot of it. But on the cash basis where this is reported, it displays in July.
So it's retro pay?
It's retro pay that's owed to
Right, for
settle
the
out all the
contract.
officers.
Right, yeah.
And that was about $323,000 to the sworn officers. And that was roughly probably 15 months of salaries.
Any questions on that at all? Anything else, Ruth?
Thank you. Thanks,
I don't
Brad.
really have
Thank you.
anything else unless you have any questions.
I just think the one thing, when you look over the monthly reports, there was some real positiveness that we've seen in these monthly reports, some high marks that we're starting to see in some areas. The sales tax, I was really happy to see how much of that's increasing. We're pretty stable the last year. We're up about $56,000 in that from the sales tax standpoint. But if you look at the home rule sales tax, we're doing pretty well in that also. So I think in the overall picture, when I went through the report, I was pretty happy to see that we're managing in the areas that we want to increase, and then the areas that have been decreasing for many years, we're holding our own in those areas. That we're not really, behind drastically in those areas. So I thought the overall report was very good. You guys know the video gaming, that's important to look at, just because here's why. When we talk about it in a room, it just kind of comes out to the realization that we are making some money doing it. And the other side of it is as we grow or as we increase, some of these individuals that we are approving now have not even been on this yet. So that is future revenue. I think we have, if I counted right, we have probably 4 or 5 that have not got on the scales yet, where they would be involved in this, and that will happen over the next month or two as they go through it. Some of them already have their state license, so by us approving it, they're ready to go, and then some don't. So it's a mixture of both. Any questions at all from the board at all regarding the financial report?
Nice job. and
Ruth,
nice
thank you for the
commentary.
first time out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm trying to learn everyone's name in the village, and it's been very hard. I'm trying to, as I go around, I'm hoping people aren't asking me to, say their name again, because I'm learning as quick as I can. But it's been, you guys have a great staff, and I commend you, because I know a lot of the staffs have been pretty busy here the last couple of months, all the stuff that's been going on. So congratulations. Thank you. Thank you for the report. So that's item number 3. Item number 4, discuss seeking IRMA liability workman's comp insurance. As you know, at the last meeting, I pulled off some of the information on IRMA. The main objective of why we did is we wanted to get our arms around a lot of the pieces of IRMA. IRMA is not a small layout for the village. There's roughly 10 policies that fall under the IRMA arm, with workman's comp probably being the biggest. So our game plan here is to go out to bid it. We're gonna, we haven't done that in the past here, at least in the last few years. So our opportunity is to go out. Me and Dave had the opportunity to meet with IRMA Monday morning, spent about 2.5 hours with them. I got a little better of a handle of what's going on within the IRMA piece. Dave has a pretty good handle on it right now, but for me, it was just more education purposes. And I think that what we need to do is, one of the ideas that we're going to do is bring IRMA in to talk to the trustees at one of the meetings, to be able to kind of go over what IRMA does. I think that's an important element of it. And then number 2, we want to go out and we want to bid the policies that we have and have a timetable. I think the key element is we want to have a timetable that we can meet, so that if we are required to give notices, if we decide that we would want to go out to someone else, that those notices are exactly what are required, and that nothing is left on the table from the standpoint of what our bylaws require under IRMA. Is that probably the best way to say it, Dave? Right. So I think our view of it is that the first step would be to get the rest of the trustees involved, understand kind of what IRMA does. It's also allowing IRMA to come out and bid, be able to look at what they can do for us. I mean, there's a lot of formula-driven portions of IRMA that we understand today, and that, from a plus and minus standpoint, we just have to evaluate and be able to look at what they do. I can tell you this, they do a lot more for the village than I realized they did. I think that's a fair shade, because when they explained a lot of the things that they have the capabilities of doing, there's a lot there that is real positive. And the fact that we have a lot of staff that's involved with some of their quarterly, advisory type groups that they have. We have a lot of people within the village that's involved with this. For the workman's comp, just to go over some of the very specific safety requirements we have to do. There's a lot going on with that. So it was really, I consider it educational for me, because I got my arms around it. And that's why I want him to come in and talk to you guys, because I think it'd be important. That was a suggestion that Dave made to me, and I think it's a great idea.
I just wanted to say, I think it's a great idea that we're shopping this. I think we should bid everything, whether we get a savings from a new company or from IRMA themselves, because now they're in a competitive situation. I think that's great. I understand this insurance stuff is incredibly complex. There's a lot of moving parts. We've got to make sure that our reserves are not out there, right, and that our existing claims are covered. And I really appreciate the hard work you put into this. And
well, I think the staff. I mean, I got to give a little kudos to the staff, because the staff really, I think between Brad and Dave, and I think even Eileen, they have some understanding of pieces of this that I think. Is it Eileen? Because I want to make sure I'm saying it. Is it you, Barb? That are?
Yes. Yeah.
So we've had representatives in the past. So Steve, is it Tilton,
yes.
was involved, as a representative. So I think the key element is, right now, I think Dave and Brad are the people that we got to kind of step in and kind of walk through this. Anything you want to add?
No, I think you hit a lot of the points. I do think, and I understand the board's desire to do this, but I do think it's important that the board hear maybe not 2.5 hours, but I think maybe at least kind of the highlights from them, because this is, Irma is it's very different than kind of, bidding out health insurance or something else.
Well, health
Irma's really
insurance is-
not an insurance agency, they're actually a non-for-profit agency. And their services that are geared towards municipalities. And when we go to bid, really what you're bidding workers' comp, and there's all sorts of lines of insurance. Different companies are gonna have different caps in terms of what the coverage is. And I went through this about 8 years ago. And I think, Mike and I learned, for example, there's a couple towns, Arlington Heights went through this process, where they were debating, they took 10 months to do it. Buffalo Grove took 9 months. I mean, it's a complex process. We want to do it right. And the other thing I just would also urge too, I think this is an important decision because frankly, this is not the type of service. Actually, if you do decide to make a change, it's not the type of thing you want to do every few years, because then you don't want to get a reputation in the marketplace that you're kind of, well, we're going to switch this a few years. It is important that there be some stability. So whatever we do, I think we really need to look at this as, not just something, well, we may say a little bit a year or two, but are we, whether it's Irma going to another company, that we're really looking at as a 5-10 year, if not longer type thing.
Either way.
And I think in
Yeah.
each one of these layouts that we're looking at, I think we're doing the right fiscal thing.
Right.
For the town. But I do agree with Dave that each one of these are going to have a different view. When we change auditors this year, that was a real nice move because we've had the same audit group for 9-10 years. So I think we got to get to a point where we kind of put some timelines on them, but timelines that make sense. Timelines that, totally, and then that we work through that in all aspects of what we're trying to do here.
And
So
it's not like they can't bid here. I mean, we're just making
Right.
sure we're getting the most value for
It's
our
exactly
taxpayers.
right.
Yeah.
And the key element, it's not an easy bid.
Right.
The key that if I can say one thing today, that the view here has to be that this is very technical in nature, and the fact that all these different types of insurance, it's not like when I did the RFQ for the health insurance. This one's a little bit more of you have to really understand every element of it, because when you go out to bid, you've got to make sure that the carrier you're looking at to bid it is giving you the right type of insurance carrier for what we're trying to accomplish. So cybersecurity, you're going to go out and bid that. You got to make sure that whoever you're getting that insurance with is probably really up on what they do for cybersecurity, and that we understand what that policy is what is the policy, so that if we did have an incident, it is covered. We got to make sure that's how it ties in. So it's a little bit more difficult to make sure that happens. But I wanted to bring it up today because it's one of the ideas we're bringing out. I've tried to talk to the trustees a little, but I think by having Irma come in, then that'll open some dialogue that we can start to talk a little bit about how we're going to do this. And I really think it's key for a timeline, because for staff, we've got to make sure we give enough time to make sure that staff understands, that they have the time to do what they need to do too. Because the staff will be involved in this, because they have to give information in return for us to go out to bid it, and they will be part of that bid process.
Well, they'll have different roles when the process does take place, right? They're officers of each department, or?
We'll basically have the people that we feel need to be involved, and that's what we're talking about, this timeline. The next step in the process is to lay out a timeline and let you guys see it,
Okay.
and be able to go through that. Any other questions on that at all? Okay. Number 5, I'm going to leave that to Dave to kind of just go over and explain.
Sure, this is basically, it's really a routine, essentially a reconciliation that we have to do of our MFT monies with IDOT. It's typically something we would put on a consent agenda item, but again, this is the first time that many of you discuss this. So I'm going to let Ruth maybe talk a little bit more about what it's about and just some of the key numbers very short.
Well, we've been audited by MMT over the years several times, and whenever we've been audited, some years they've gone back 7 to 10 years, and and they keep trying to get caught up, but they're still back to 2015. Okay, so, and they've been working primarily with Eileen on working through some of the entries and projects and various things too on that closeout. But one thing I can tell you at the end of this report where it says the net balance in our account on December 31st, 2015, that completely agrees with our cash balance.
Okay,
Oh,
As of
nice.
that point in time.
great.
So that is basically the bottom line.
And that's,
We
that was
are in
that was good,
agreement.
that's,
Right.
okay.
So
And a
you're
lot of their
reconciling
other
it.
pluses and minuses within here have to do with some of the various projects. Several years ago, when we would do projects, we did them out of MFT and paid them back from local roads. And we've kind of changed that now where we budget each piece within those two funds.
Okay.
And it just makes it simpler as far as the MFT review.
So no matter what-
going forward.
Okay.
So the bottom line is we're ending on the same page.
Okay, and that's the key.
That's the key. And I even brought a report to show you.
Okay,
Okay?
okay.
This
And I'm,
is-
and one of the things that, you know, with some of the adjustments that were made, that's basically based on how we did it, you're saying, back in that day.
Right.
And
we
today,
typically always do more than we have MFT dollars available for as far as our pavement management program. So we've always had to come up with the funding for the balance that we wanted to do. So that's where we've created the local roads funds in the last 10 years to be able to do more than just a minimal level of road improvement.
okay,
So
okay.
that's pretty much how it works out.
okay. Any questions from the board?
So you need us to approve this to kind of reconcile
It's
the
just
accounts? and-
something that's required by the state, that it's acknowledged that it was presented to the board. It really only needs to be presented. Brad's memo within here at the beginning of it is pretty much, if you read that, that's his summary of what they're attempting to say. There's no real action except to acknowledge that you have received the report.
So it's going to go to the board, Mike?
Yeah, no, I
For
just,
approval.
so you're just
You know.
looking for us to send it up?
Send it,
Okay.
send it, send it up there. And if
And
you
then
have some
next
questions
year-
on it, but, you know, between now and the board meeting, I'd be
So,
more than
so
happy to go
moved.
over it.
Or do you need a motion, or?
I need
just-
a- yeah.
Okay, so
You can
moved.
make a motion for it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any comments from the public? Anything today?
Just a couple questions about switching insurance. Dave, you mentioned that it was, 8 years ago that you looked into
I don't think that's
possibly
here.
changing?
In another community, yeah.
I'm
Not
sorry?
here.
In another community, we actually did go out to bid. I went through the
Okay.
process, yeah.
Did they stay with Irma?
Yes,
They did?
they did.
Can you elaborate? Any reason why they chose to
Sure.
stay with them?
I mean, they got multiple bids, and the quotes and the levels of, the prices were cheaper and the levels of coverage were better from Irma.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have they given any indication that they're going to be raising their premiums?
Well, again, Irma doesn't, they're not like a typical insurance company. Their formula for premiums are based on a couple of things. One is they're currently based on the revenues of the community. We learned they're looking at change that they do expenditure, and it's also based on your losses. So it's not, it varies from year to year.
Okay.
The marketplace varies from year to year. You know, I mean, you could have something where they might be favorable one year and might not be as favorable the next year, so.
The key with it that I think,
Yeah.
we talked a lot about this on Monday morning, the fact that we're one of the biggest villages in the Irma pool. So because it's based on our revenues, we're paying in a pretty good amount of money because our revenues are growing. And that's one of the things, that's why we talked about that, and that's why they are looking at expenditures.
Yeah.
Because expenditures make sense, tying expenditures to your premium, because you have some options with the expenditures, that if you want to lower expenditures, you
Yeah.
can do that, and it gives us a benefit by doing that. Where revenues, we want to grow revenues.
Yeah.
So if we grow revenues, then we're also paying more money in a premium.
Right.
And there's some communities, we learned Buffalo Grove recently left. You know, each situation's different. The town I was in, Oak Brook, not like Tinley Park. I don't think we really know until we actually go out and do the work. So
Okay.
it's,
I'm just curious, I
Yeah.
mean, does any of this have to do with a large payout to Buckeye?
no,
No.
no.
So they
No.
don't, there's no downside to having to actually use them to make a payment? to settle a lawsuit or something like that. There's not, do they take that into consideration?
Yeah, you have, one of your formulas within IRMA has to do with your exposure of what has been paid out over a period of time.
Okay.
And they take that and they do it over a 5-year history, and they blend it over a 5 years.
Okay.
So by blending it over to 5 years, it kind of lowers the amount. The other thing that I thought was real positive with IRMA, which I didn't know until we talked to them on Monday, is they only hit you for a portion of what they pay out. So there's a maximum amount. So even if they pay out $1.7 million, you only get hit for a portion of that into your calculation for
Okay.
how much you pay. So
Okay.
I'll be honest with you, that's one of the bigger benefits that I seen out of sitting with them
Right.
on Monday that you wouldn't get with another courier.
So it's not so damaging.
It isn't.
Not that it's, that's the wrong word to use. It doesn't affect you as negatively.
As it would have been if we
Is
got
it-
hit for the whole amount.
Okay.
And I thought that was a big deal, because
Okay.
what we did
Yeah.
pay out, that makes what we did and how we settled, it made a lot of sense based on the
Right.
pieces of how it would affect us over time.
Okay. Do these other insurance companies that could be bidding, do they obviously, they look back at history?
It's
As far
based on-
as
it's based on
settlements or
current-
things like that? They, just
Yeah.
like a
Insur-
normal insurance company would?
They're going to make an assessment based on, yes, they will. In fact, when you go through process, they want to look at your losses for the last few years, so.
Right.
They'll look at that, they'll look at the market, yeah.
Okay.
so.
But the benefit of how they pay, it's based on occurrence. So based
Okay.
on the occurrence, whoever does take us, if we ever did decide to move, it's based on when we start with them moving forward. So
Okay.
so give you an example, if we had a lawsuit that hit us 2 years from now that was back from 2014, IRMA's still accountable for that.
Right, right.
So that's
I
the
understand that
that's the
part.
difference with it.
Okay. For them, is there, I'm worried about, so we've been with Irma here in Tinley Park for how long? Do you
Long time.
happen to know?
Long time.
Yeah, I think they were probably 20 years at least.
I was told
already.
26 years. I don't know if that's accurate. I was told 26 years. But
Okay.
I asked that question, so I'm.
Yeah, they were actually, I think, because they were part of the South Suburban one in the 1990s, probably about 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I little concerned about going with someone new. They obviously know us well. They know the ins and outs. They know our village. Bit of a process for a new company to come in here and learn. I just think that little bit of an issue there.
Well, there's other companies out there, other pools and other places that are doing towns as big as us. One of the negatives that I see, and it's not a big negative, I don't want to make it, we're the biggest player with IRMA. There is some concerns with that if they don't bring in other bigger players. So, that's some of the views that we have to look at. But there's other towns like Oak Lawn and different towns that are with other well-established, no different than what IRMA has. So we just have to evaluate that. My
Okay.
view of it today is I don't know if we'll change. I really don't know if we'll
Okay.
change. But fiscally, we're accountable to go out and check it.
Okay.
Because it's not a small amount that we pay for the 10 pieces of insurance that we have. And I just think that if we go out and bid it and we come back, Dave has a situation where we say, hey, IRMA's still the best one. We're going to stay with them. And it's not just going to be on money. I mean, there's a lot of what I think that or at least I found out on Monday's meeting, there's a lot of other things that IRMA gives us that has to be evaluated by someone else. Do they give us those same things?
Right.
They're
Can I
big-
just ask how it came about? It hasn't been done in 20-something years? I'm just curious.
We're doing it with
Why
a lot-
not?
I'm doing it, I'm trying to go through everything that we have, that I consider big ticket items, and looking to make sure that we're going out and fiscally looking at to make it sense. And, no different with the other insurance, we have to go out and look at this stuff when they're big line items, because the first question is someone raised in a meeting, have you ever gone out and bid that? And we say no, I think there's a problem with that.
Yeah.
Why did we change auditors? Well, you shouldn't keep the same auditor for X amount of years. You should be changing. So I think those are important aspects as we're new trustees. We've only been in this 3 or 4 months, but we're looking at all these line items to say, what are the big expenditures and are we going through it? In the end, if we stay with IRMA, I think we've still done the right thing by going out and evaluating.
So you were the one who brought this forward?
We've been
that
talking about
we
it
should
internally, yes.
Do this? Okay,
Yes.
I'm just curious.
Yes.
So, okay, thanks.
We good? Okay, can I get a motion to close?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
second, do we?
You got
Thank you. Thanks.
I'd like to call the Administration and Legal Committee to order. Do we need a roll call or anything? Patrick, do
What's that?
we need a roll call?
You can call to order, Mike.
First item on the agenda is consider approval of the minutes of the Special Administration and Legal Committee held on August 1st, 2017. Do I have such a motion?
Make a motion.
I'm so moved.
I'll make a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is discuss hiring a technology information officer. Pat, is that your item, or?
I'm going to take this one, Mike. So, this is something that was actually approved in our budget this year, and you may remember from the presentation from Matrix a couple of months ago, it was also one of their recommendations. As noted in the study, we have currently have 3 technicians in our information technology division. They looked at basically comparable municipalities. The average is about 5.25, and basically, I think one of the things our technology division, like some other municipalities that I've seen too, we established this thing probably decades ago when most of the technology needs were things related to accounting, finance, things like that. And now technology is so much more than that. Technology is really an integral part of how every department gets their work done. And part of the staffing study was done. We actually also did a survey, an internal survey, and I think there was a desire certainly from the other staff to, I think, and basically improve service levels related to responsiveness and timely support. So this position is actually recommended, frankly, for a community our size. I really don't know of any community of our size that doesn't have a management position like this. I know there was discussions back then, should we make it a director manager position? We've made, the recommendation here is a manager position, and it's also that we actually move it from being part of the treasurer's office to being a division under the manager's office that would actually be supervised by the assistant manager. And again, I think you're seeing that in a lot more organizations just because the need for information technology is more than just about finance and accounting. And I think as noted in the memo, I think there's several advantages to this position. It would provide a position focused exclusively on information technology and would basically allow one person to be able to focus on providing a high service level. It would be a dedicated management position able to lead the management of new software implementation. I will tell you in my 3 years here, we've gone about, there's been a few times when we've gone and our software needs are behind. And we have a staff that's basically, we've essentially done a lot of these things by committee, from a work order system to a timekeeping system. And you heard Paula talk a little bit ago about the new system for community development. We ask folks that are frankly not experts in this area to get these things done. And the work order system took almost 2 years to get done. And a lot of it is, one, you've got people that frankly that's not their job. And really the way I look at a position like this is not only going to help, I think, make us more efficient. It'll basically also, what I'd like to focus on is improving some of the things. We do a lot of things like by paper here, timesheets, things like that, but I also wanted to focus externally and what more can we do to improve how we do business with residents. Obviously we do things like electronic water billing. Now can we expand that, and can we I think today's technology, we just started a Facebook page a year or so ago, but I think we're going to have to get more and more engaged in terms of making sure that we have technology that is modern and up to date, and that makes it easier for our residents to get service and interact with our services. So this position, again, it will be a management position, but it still will be expected to be something that's going to be doing, work in terms of service issues and other issues. It's still, even with the, this would now be 4 positions, we're still slightly understaffed. There may be a time we have to come back and look at other part-time positions, but I want to get this new manager in here and assess that. Maybe there's some things we can do where he or she could basically make some recommendations that rather than bringing part-timers, we can contract out some things. We wanted to take a look at that. But this is really a critical position. And one of the things I think I noted, when I got here 6 months ago, and it's just been a matter of really being able to find room in the budget for it. But I think this would be something that would be, I think, definitely improve service levels both internally and externally. And Pat and I have talked about this for a couple of years. I know Pat, when he was in his position as the EMA director, I know expressed his concerns about needing to improve some of the service levels, I think, in all the public safety organizations, and I think this will help with that too. And that's I think it's good to have this being directly supervised by the assistant manager. So,
I'd like to throw just a few comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
My view of it was when we talked about really critical positions at a couple board meetings ago, this was one of the positions that I felt was really critical.
Right.
I think as much as it is on a day-to-day basis, the strategic responsibility of this position is just as critical as anything else. There's so many things that the village can improve on from a technology standpoint, and you have to have someone at this level up here that really understands how to take them there, what to do and how to take them there. And I think it's not a negative toward our staff that we have
Not at
today.
all. No.
I think our staff today are good in the day-to-day.
Right.
This is more of a bigger picture, and I think this is one of 3 or 4 positions within the village that I think is critical.
yeah.
And we do have to go out, and that's why in the residency discussions and all that stuff, we have to go out and find the right people that really fit the quality of what we want in the village. And I think this is one of the biggest positions we got going right now.
That's kind of leads to my next question. I don't disagree. It's an area we need improvement. I agree it's an important position that in today's world, with the changes in technology happening, quite often you need somebody who's in the mix. I noticed the salary. I don't have any idea of the market, but what kind of a person are you envisioning? Somebody who's been in the business for years, coming from private industry? Do we need a government type of person because of this? I mean, I agree it's a big addition to the team, possibly one of the most important people we have here going forward, under the manager and the rest. But
Couple
I wonder
things.
who that person,
Yeah.
what they might look like
Yeah.
before.
I think whether this is one of those positions that I think I don't think whether the government or private sector, I think we would certainly look at both. I think somebody who's not only has good technology skills, but I think somebody, you want to make sure somebody who's a good manager and I think, as Trustee Mangan talked about, I think has some good strategic thinking. And I will tell you, looking at salaries, obviously we're in the middle of a pay plan, and we've talked about this. I talked with Denise about this today. Her recommendation, and after I did some research over the last couple of days, is to actually advertise this as a kind of a depending on qualifications. I will tell you, Orland Park just hired somebody as a director, I just learned yesterday, $132,000.
And they've got 8 people in there.
Yes, they got 8 people, yeah.
that's
So I've
9?
given my memo 110. I
Yeah.
want to be straight with you, that may not do it. So I'd like to,
Well, you think it'll be more than that?
I think it could be, yeah,
And
based on what I'm learning,
I know
yes.
from the
Yeah.
private sector, because I dealt with, this
I
fell
know.
underneath me at the bank.
Okay.
I know from the private sector, we're in the ballpark,
Yeah.
based on what he's saying. So
Yeah.
from a private sector, it just depends on the quality of the individual,
Yeah.
the amount of experience that individual has. And the other part of it is some of these guys are really good on the intrusion testing, the security, the cybersecurity. If we can
Right.
get someone that has that talent, you're gonna want to make sure you get someone like
Well, I
that in
think we
here.
could use some help with our information.
But the guy,
Too
I
bad,
can tell you, the guy we had at our bank was phenomenal. And I know what he was making, and he's in that ballpark. So,
Could you keep me in the loop on the interviews and who's kind of applying and that type of thing?
Sure, yeah, like a lot of these hiring processes is probably something, I think if we got somebody on around the first of the year, I'd be,
Well, you know, if
But
we
yeah,
get,
but we'll
if we
definitely
get
see-
close to the last person or two, maybe
Sure.
let me know who.
Definitely, okay.
I like to see the folks that are coming in.
okay.
I just like that the fact that you got it up here, we're going after it, and, you know, some of these positions, you know, whatever we can do to fill them, you know, let's hope that we can, you know, bring someone from the outside, and, hey, our first goal would be to get someone from Tinley Park. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
If
would
we
be
could get
good.
someone from Tinley Park, that'd be
I
awesome.
think
That would
you
be
give
great.
them a preference, but I think
Yeah.
the key for this job, and this would have been one I would have said is, you know, how we talked about residency, and I said maybe emergencies. My main goal was keep police in
Yep,
town, but
yep.
the key is get the right guy. Or young.
Dave, will you keep the organization lead tech and then 2 other techs, or will you let this person decide?
I think we
structure
have
of
them
the
come in
remaining-
and evaluate the whole organization.
Okay.
You know, I think as Trustee Mangan said, because I want to make sure, this is, the 3 people we have now, I mean, they're just running around like chickens with their heads cut off. They're working so hard, and this is not a knock against, it's just the way that we're structured now, needs to be different, and they need some help. It's just 3 people, for an organization this size is just not sufficient.
How many locales are they in? Do they travel? Each of the gentlemen that do this?
Yeah, I mean, they
They travel from
basically,
where to where to where?
they work off-site. Pat, I don't know how, do you usually see just one of them? I mean, what is it, or is it, I know Ryan you see a lot, or do you ever see?
Yeah, we
Dennis,
see all of them. I mean,
okay,
there's-
okay.
They're, you know, at any given time, they're coming in the middle of the night, you know, we're calling them in
Yeah.
for technical problems in the 911 center, technical problems out in the field with police units with their laptops, things like that. So it's critical, and, you know, they get run pretty ragged sometimes. So our whole 911 center is dependent on them. So anything that goes down, they're one of the first people that we call. Our radio system is tied in to IT and our servers and the whole network.
Yeah.
So it's the cameras, I mean, everything, they spend a lot of time in public safety, so.
And they're here 9 to 5 during the week too, plus these things that come up, so. Yeah.
For salaried or overtime? And how does that work?
They're salaried,
Okay.
right, yeah.
Thank you.
And this position would be too, so, yeah, a salaried position. That's it, we'll,
All
keep it moving,
right,
so.
that, anybody have any other questions on the information technology manager?
Not at this time.
Moving on to the next item of business, discuss ordinance amending the consent agenda. I know we had something on at the last meeting of the whole. I have just 2 questions, and I called you since then. On the list, you have a list of items that are specified as far as number A, appointment of officers or employees. It always been kind of a pet peeve of mine that with the past administration, there'd be 8 guys up for approval to important committees, and they were on the agenda before I had met them or knew about them. You know what I'm saying? I thought maybe we could add some language to that, something along the lines of with notice and no objection or discussion amongst the board. Discussion and approval. I know it's hard to do, but
Yeah, we discussed it, and fair point, and just so we remember, we're back here with this consent agenda, and Mike and I have discussed it multiple times.
maybe beating a dead horse
We're
about something that
probably
doesn't
making this a
matter.
little more difficult
Yeah.
than it needs to be.
Yeah.
I come from it, I think about it this way, it's your agenda, you know, it's your board's agenda, you know, you set the agenda how you like. If you kind of remember the history here, we amended the code to add, when we looked at changing the entire committee structure, we amended the code to allow items of a routine nature that were unanimously approved by a committee. And then we kind of looked at defining routine a little more, and what's before you, I don't think we approved that yet, is, you know, kind of that definition of routine. And what I submitted to you was that the best way to do it was probably define what is not routine
Right.
instead, so, and I think we have contracts under $50,000, planning items, things like that. So that's all set up, and then Mike and I started talking about the appointment item that was on there. That's not something that came new out of this committee or any recent committee. That's been on there. I think we looked, maybe it was a 96 maybe that went on there. So certainly understand Trustee Panito's point. The problem is, when we start getting down to codifying, when is the notice? So you get your agendas on Fridays. Is it before that? What does an objection mean? Does that mean you have to call the manager and object to it? If that's something that you guys are worried about, I'd say save yourselves the trouble and just take it off the consent
Well, here,
agenda.
let me just throw one idea,
Okay. Yeah.
just one idea. Would it be better, and I'm just trying to get at something that might be equal in the middle. What about if it was for appointments of people that were heads of departments? So that we would be, so it wouldn't be everyone, all staff appointments. So if someone was the head of the department, that wouldn't go on the consent agenda.
Right.
That would be opportunity, because those are the bigger positions. It's kind of looking at the IT position.
Right.
Be an opportunity there. I know that we've had this discussion with some other people that maybe that might be
Certainly makes
something in the
sense.
middle, because those other positions, here's how I view it, we gotta give the people that are managing them the opportunity to hire.
Right.
I get that if we do have a question, we can pull it off the consent agenda if
There's
there's
always a
something.
fail-safe.
Well, I think this, it applies to appointments of commissioners and employees, right? So arguably, we've got a duty to give advice and consent to commission
Well, if it's commissioners, then that's another, I'm reading this, I think that there would be two,
I'm
No,
reading the
it's
appointment of
it's
officers.
appointments.
it's
Yeah,
appointments of
appointments.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's
they
appointments.
would mean commissioners as well.
And I don't think we've ever put the whole, 'cause I think you guys do it, you guys have seen it. You do the one big
Yeah.
yearly chunk of
Yeah.
commission appointments. I don't think that's ever going on the consent
I
agenda.
think it
could
might be
wrong.
easier just to take it off.
Again,
I don't see
it's-
how we could get
It's
it
your
to-
guys' agenda.
to be-
It's probably not worth,
Yeah.
racking
Yeah.
your brains over
Oh, no,
for
no.
hours. Either, leave it on, go with department heads. What I don't advise is the notice and this, because it's going to be too
Right.
hard to define.
Right.
And, once we get a definition, someone will say, well, I objected to that, and not really, and
I
call the
agree.
manager. So I'd say either leave it on with some type of department head or just take it off fully. I think.
You
I think
guys
that's
call
the
on that.
decision.
I'd say take it off, it's too hard to define, and
I say take it off.
Okay.
becomes
So we
tricky.
got-
Second one I had a problem with was the authorizing reductions in releases or letters of credit. Those are basically the contractor's bid bonds and that type of stuff.
Right.
And I talked to you about that again, and I was
Well,
concerned that,
Yeah.
but,
I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't mean
no,
to-
no, you're ready to go, I'm
Yeah.
moving out of the way.
So it's not exactly bid, so here's how I think of letters of credits. When a developer's coming in and building some big project or doing a subdivision or something like that, we require, just as every other village does, either some type of security to say, hey, when you're building that street, you're doing those curbs,
Right.
we're gonna, ultimately, they're gonna be the villages, right? They're gonna be our streets, they're gonna be our curbs, and we're responsible for them. So we get an engineer's estimate, they say it's gonna be $1 million to do that street, give us a letter of credit, and a lot of those letters of credit, the contractors, obviously, that's part of their debt, so they always, hey, we did half the street, reduce it halfway down for us. I've actually never seen a board do it. I've seen it all done administratively, but it's on here. And since I've been here, I've never seen any letter of credit even come to the board.
And to be honest with you, that could happen, just being a developer myself, it could happen 15 times
Yeah.
through the whole process of a development, that you keep knocking down that amount of letter of credit.
I've never seen boards approve these.
So I just wanted to make sure there were releases or waivers from
Yeah.
the subs and that kind of stuff before it went on a consent agenda, and arguably there was nothing to recover if the money or the letter of credit was released too soon. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, the letter of credit, the village can take at any time if they're not being held responsible for that. So the letter of credit's different than getting lien waivers. That's not the same process on a letter of credit.
I think both excellent points, and trustee Pino, because I've seen where towns have
Giving it back?
just
You have
let
to
them lapse.
recoup.
Sometimes they have end
Yeah.
dates on them, and
Okay.
it causes real trouble, because especially when the market collapsed, there were a lot of unfinished subdivisions and letters of credit one could buy, and now you have a half-built subdivision with half-built streets.
Right.
And obviously those residents who bought in those subdivisions, they're coming right here saying, fix my street. And it's hard for a board to look at those residents and say, we don't have the letter of credit anymore. Well, why not? Right? So I think it's an excellent point to be monitoring those, and they should be, absolutely looked at.
Wrong place to put it, though, and
I just think if you're gonna, if there are big projects coming, having to come, for first reading, wait 2 weeks, and it could prolong the process. As you know, there could be 15 deductions on one project, but, so I think it's, I think it's actually overkill that it even needs board approval, but I've never seen it done. But it's there. That's, I think we should always monitor those and make sure that they're being looked at. But again, that's something, your agenda, you guys can set your agenda.
Mike, it sounds like you have thoughts on it. Is it overkill? Waste of time? I mean, if you're going to have the language, or you
I can tell you this, being a banker, I was
a
involved in this every day.
Yeah.
And if I had to wait 4 weeks to go through a village board, I'd never seen it happen.
Okay.
I mean,
Is it going to
we would want,
business?
huh?
Will it scare away business to?
I don't know the answer to that.
They're not going to be happy,
Yeah.
the first time, because they're going to say, why do you guys do that? I've never had to do that. That's the answer you're going to
It puts us, let's say this, it puts us different than every other town. I think the checks and balances need to be within the village.
Okay.
I don't know if the checks and balances need to be the board. I think there needs to be checks and balances to make sure that the process is working the way it should work. But
Let's leave it the way it is for now, and if it becomes an issue, we haven't had anybody really doing much lately anyhow, right?
we're back to that now.
And hopefully that changes,
Yeah.
for you guys. And, but I'd say, Mike, when we talked, I told you my story, there are things where more mistakes get made in this area, it could really, they're
Give you a
costly,
black
they're
eye,
costly
an
mistakes.
expensive black eye,
'Cause
right.
all of a sudden, you've got an unfixed street, and, there's not a lot of towns have a lot of extra money in the budget to go fix that street for somebody else's street, so it's great to keep an eye on. I'm sure Brad and his office do, what's ever left out there. I don't even know that they're already left out there, but I'm sure they're handled by Brad pretty well.
Okay. Anything else on that item?
So then so for your next meeting, we'll have that same language that I had, contracts under 50, I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry, contracts under 50, no planning and zoning.
Zoning
things like
matters that
that.
shall be placed on the consent agenda. Village attorney stated the prohibition against all items from committee meetings immediately proceeding to a
Yes,
board meeting.
That was the other one.
That was the other item, I believe.
Yes,
We're
that
going
was,
to take
thank
off
you.
the appointment of officers.
And then I will remove appointment of officers.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
That will be
Appreciate
that.
you for humoring me on.
No, thanks,
making
Mike.
that work.
Excellent.
No, it's
excellent
good.
stuff.
Not everybody knows these
Hey,
things, Mike.
Brought up some good points.
Excellent
Yeah, I don't
points.
know how good they were. Thanks, though. That said, any comments from the public? Let the record reflect no one from the public wishes to address the administration and legal committee because we're doing an awesome job.
There you go.
All right.
Do we adjourn?
You want to adjourn, Mike?
To
Do I have a
adjourn?
motion to adjourn?
I make a
So
motion.
moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's how we